There are places in Connecticut where life usually moves quietly, almost rhythmically. Small neighborhoods where residents know each other well, and unexpected events become topics of conversation for years afterward. One such story came to my attention while I was reviewing old archives and speaking with people who still remember those days. And the deeper I went into the documents, the more unusual this chain of events began to look. An episode that left a lasting mark on the community. They say it all started in late 2011, during one of those cold weeks when the fog settles low between rows of older houses and the streets grow quiet long before evening. At that time, the city of Bridgeport was handling a few unusual reports, the kind that made residents wonder what might be happening just beyond their view. People later described the atmosphere as strangely tense, though no one could explain why. In several archived documents, a man named Tyree Smith appeared as someone who would later be connected to the central incident in this story. According to records, he struggled with a serious mental health condition that sometimes affected his behavior. Those who knew him said that in certain moments he spoke passionately about mythology, symbols, and figures from ancient stories, as if he felt caught between reality and something more imagined. One evening, just before the events that would define this case, he visited his cousin, Nicole Rabb. Her recollections were later included in the case files. She described him talking intensely about legendary figures and about needing to face some kind of personal challenge. His thoughts, she said, moved rapidly from one idea to another, and although it felt unusual, no one around him could have predicted what would follow. The next day, according to her statements, he returned. But this time, something about him seemed different, more distressed, more confused. Official documents note that he described the previous night using symbolic and fragmented language, as if he were trying to interpret his own thoughts rather than recount events. Specialists would later explain that he was experiencing a severe mental health crisis at the time, one that profoundly influenced his perception of the world around him. Meanwhile, life in Bridgeport went on. But in January 2012, a discovery in a vacant apartment led local authorities to open a major investigation. Information spread gradually, but as more details came out, residents discussed the situation with increasing concern. Later sources confirmed that a local man named Angel Gonzalez had been found under circumstances that required extensive examination. His passing became a central focus of the investigation. Before long, investigators connected the case to Tyree Smith. At that point, his mental state was described as extremely unstable, and medical professionals emphasized the need for intensive, long-term treatment. After reviewing psychiatric evaluations, the court determined that he required specialized care rather than a correctional sentence. He was therefore placed in a secure forensic hospital under a long-term commitment for treatment. For many years, he remained under close medical supervision. Facilities of this type operate under strict guidelines, regular evaluations, controlled environments, and structured therapeutic programs. According to medical reports, his condition gradually improved. Psychiatrists stated that with consistent medication and therapy, he became steadier, more aware, and more cooperative. He participated in group sessions, engaged with recovery programs, and over time became known as someone who supported other patients. One of the evaluating psychiatrists, Dr. Karen Teitelbaum, mentioned in an official statement that once his condition stabilized, he showed a calm and constructive presence in the facility. She explained that he adhered to medication, followed guidance from the staff, and remained actively involved in group and substance use recovery programs. But archival records also show that before his condition fully stabilized, his earlier years in custody included several challenging moments. Reports from the Connecticut Department of Correction referenced a few confrontations that required the staff to intervene. In one instance, there was an argument with another inmate. Officers later wrote that he claimed the other person had spoken out of line, and the situation seemed to stem from emotional strain rather than intent. These events were documented, but specialists later noted that they stopped occurring once his medical treatment fully took effect. When discussions began about the possibility of conditional release, the process was slow and highly regulated. Cases involving long-term psychiatric care undergo multiple levels of review. Once doctors stated that his condition had reached sustained stability, the matter was brought before the Psychiatric Security Review Board. Earlier this year, according to archived reports, the board approved a conditional release with strict requirements, ongoing treatment, continuous supervision, limited movement, and regular check-ins with professionals. Predictably, this decision brought mixed reactions from the community, especially from those who remembered the original events. Members of Angel Gonzalez's family expressed concern in interviews. Talitha Frazier, the sister-in-law of Mr. Gonzalez, said the news made her uneasy. She emphasized that although she understood the medical evaluations, she still felt uncertainty about the idea of someone previously involved in such a serious investigation returning to community life. Her comments were widely quoted in local media outlets. Court archives also preserved statements made by Tyree himself. He expressed sorrow for the events connected to the case, explaining that his mental illness had completely overtaken his ability to understand his actions at the time. He said he never intended harm and that he regretted the pain that followed. His words became part of the official record and were considered by the board evaluating his future. Many residents still recall this episode as a reminder of how complex mental health crises can be, especially when they intersect with public safety. This story shows how important proper medical care can be, and how decisions in such cases rely not on emotion, but on clinical assessments, legal standards, and years of documented progress. Today, Tyree lives under continuous monitoring, follows a structured treatment plan, and remains under strict conditions. According to professionals, he continues to comply with therapy and oversight. His case remains one of the most discussed in the region, calmly, thoughtfully, and without sensationalism, as a reflection of how difficult and unpredictable human circumstances can be. And as I turned the last pages of the archived reports, one thought became clear to me. Understanding events like these often requires time, patience, and a willingness to look at the facts through the eyes of professionals who handle such cases every day. The years have passed, but this story still lives in quiet conversations among those who remember how it all began.